Hello. Thank
Oh,
you for joining our podcast.
hello.
This episode is brought to you by Jake and Chad.
Yep. That's us.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Week 14, right?
Yep, 14. 14.
Yeah. That's been awesome, man.
The big 1-4.
Let's see. Oh, wait, that's a quarter of a year, right?
Quarter of a year. Yeah. Yeah, wow. Huh.
52 weeks,
Yeah.
26 weeks, a little bit more, I guess.
28.
Last week.
14 times 2 is 28.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. 56. Yeah.
Yeah.
28. All right. Sweet.
Yep.
That's awesome. Every week, we've been able to do that. As we talk about that, this week's episode, we're going into accountability. And so, in order to make it 14 straight weeks without missing a beat, we have to hold ourselves accountable each and every week about setting aside this time on Friday evenings. Now, maybe you guys are listening to us at a different time or whenever the episode get uploaded, but each week on Friday we do this episode. So, how was last week's episode with Millie? How did that go?
Oh, it was good, dude. She was in your house. Did you know she was staying over at your house, or?
Yeah, I went to go get her pills and she locked
Oh,
me
okay.
out. So I was out for like, I don't know, an
Couple
hour and a
hours.
half.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then she fell asleep. So I had to call the maintenance emergency hotline and they
Uh,
came and like let me in.
oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, then
Yeah.
I got a couple of notices. I guess she was smoking in the apartment.
Yeah. Yeah.
She plugged up the toilet a couple times.
Yeah, I'm sure. A couple times in a couple hours, huh?
Well, no, she saved a week, but I'm talking about
Oh,
the while
nice.
she was on the
Oh,
podcast.
she's gone now, though.
Yeah, she's not here anymore.
Okay. She
What'd
moved
you
out.
think?
Pretty good. I thought it was a pretty good conversation. She was a bit hostile, though.
Yeah, she's pretty feisty.
Yeah, she gets feisty.
She was going through my closet making fun of all my clothes.
Yeah.
She said, yeah, she was making fun of this shirt.
Well, did you see what she was wearing?
I didn't.
Oh, okay. You should go back and watch it.
Yeah,
She
I'm
was.
assuming it was something purple. I know that's her favorite color.
Oh, yeah. She had these little curlers in her
Yeah.
hair. Yep.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Wow. Good old Millie.
Yep.
She can be nice at times,
Mm-hmm.
pain in the ass at other times.
Yeah, I can see that a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, getting into this week's episodes, we're talking about accountability, and I think all the different forms that it plays. So I think one of the most important aspects of accountability is holding ourselves accountable. And when it comes to creating goals and then being able to accomplish those goals,
Mm-hmm.
you have to hold yourself accountable. And whether that's trying to have fitness goals, losing weight, or business goals, college, at the end of a semester there's usually a exam or a test, and so the only way to get through and to learn is by holding yourself accountable, usually on a weekly basis, saying I'm going to read this much, I'm going to study this much, instead of going at the end of the school year and just cramming for 8 hours. You may be able to pass the test, but when it comes to really accomplishing that class and being able to learn from it, you don't learn much from doing something like that. So, in terms of, I guess, holding yourself accountable, what would you say are some ways that you've done that, or what's helped you to be able to do that?
I would say like writing it down and just making goals, even if I find that if I give myself goals, I want to make them like maybe I'm shooting for the stars for my goals, but at least there's something to aim for rather than I don't really set my goals like the way that I set goals is I either write it down in my notebook or I use the reminders app on my phone and set it to daily and just put all the things that I want to be doing daily or by the end of the week I want to have this done. But I I want to give myself more goals than I think that I could really handle so that way I'll kind of push myself and to actually see the limits, see where the line's at to where I can actually achieve rather than setting easy goals and achieving those and then kind of just being done with it like that, I guess.
And when it comes to like your reminders, like what are some daily goals that you do?
Drinking water, drinking enough water is a big one because I
Mm.
don't know. Some days there's just I'll be out on a job site and I get in the mentality of rush, 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 and it's like at the end of the day I drank like t- maybe like less than a bottle's worth of water, and it's like that's
Um,
terrible, dude. I'm out there sweating a lot and I'm drinking no water, but yeah, there's that. There's just reading, whether it be just like reading a page, because I know if I read at least one page, it'll probably end up being like a 20, 30 minute thing at least. It's just
mm.
opening it up and reading the first page. Going to the gym, I try to do that like 3, 4, 5 times a week. Just, yeah.
And when you go to the gym, do you go before work or after work?
I like to go before work, but if I don't get up before work, I go after work. But yeah.
Okay. I know that was something it would be so hard for me to go after work. I don't know how
Yeah.
people do it because you go after work, you've already had a mentally taxing day on your mind, whether you're thinking about work, especially if it wasn't a good day at work and you had
Mm-hmm.
some issues that you had to deal with. Then you're going to the gym. The gym's usually busy after work. uh, and then dealing with that. That's why for me it's so easy to wake up, whether even if it's 4:30. I
Mm-hmm.
wake up, my mind is refreshed. I usually have gotten my 8 hours of sleep, and so I just one of the first ones there. I actually am out standing outside the door, waiting for them to lock the door every day.
Oh, it's not a
Um,
24-hour gym?
no,
Oh.
they open at 5.
Hmm.
So and then like when you brought up drinking water and the importance of that, do you find yourself like having headaches when you don't drink water?
I get dizzy when I don't drink enough water.
Dizzy.
Yeah.
Wow.
I remember like one time when I was in high school, I was in the kitchen and I just like passed out. And I went to
At
the
mom and dad's?
yeah, and I went to the
Oh wow.
hospital and they said I was just like super dehydrated. Yeah.
I never knew that you went to the hospital for something like that.
Yeah.
Wow. One thing that's interesting, all the goals that you seem to have shared right there, I think it's important, is to make actionable goals.
Yeah.
So you can have, let's say, your far out goal that you've created is to lose 45 pounds, or to it sounds like you maybe like it's a to read a book a month or something like that. It's like, okay, well, what are the actionable items that it takes in
Mhm.
order for you to read a book a month? Well, how many pages is that a day, or how
Right.
many hours is that a day? And so that's what's really really important when it comes to holding ourselves accountable, is making sure if it comes to obtaining goals that there are actionable items associated with being able to obtain those goals. And I think you brought up a really good point when you spoke about, you would rather have far out reachable goals in the long term,
Mhm.
and then in the short term even not be able to accomplish everything in a day. And I've heard it said that most of us overshoot
Mm.
what we can accomplish
In a
in a
day.
lifetime, and
Oh, okay.
undershoot what we can accomplish in a day. Or
Oh.
do I have them backwards?
I always heard you you think you can do more in a day, but you think you can do less than you can actually do in a year. Or I guess
Huh.
there's a bunch of different ones, but yeah.
I guess there could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just the mind is so focused on what can I do right now rather than how is what I'm doing right now going to compound and exponentially grow my ability and make it so that I can do this in a month or this in a year, or yeah, I don't know, just doing something every day and just having that discipline and keeping to it, your skills will grow at a percentage each and every day. Like, even if it's just 1%, you're getting better 1% every day. You're getting better 1.1% tomorrow. And then you know, it's exponentially getting more and more. So, yeah.
Yeah. And For me, the thing I think that really helps with accountability is by creating routine. And so, like for me, so I drink 2 gallons of water every single day. I go to the gym every day but Wednesday. During the week, I wake up at 4:30, and so I already have that set in my head to where this is what I'm going and I'm doing. Tomorrow, I'll be there at probably around 9 o'clock, and then on Sunday, probably 8 o'clock. But I just have so many routines that I do, especially when it comes to my meal plan. Every single day, I have chicken and rice. Every
Mhm.
single morning, I have eggs and oats. And so it's just so routine driven to where my body is being held accountable versus there's not just no recipe or no routine to where it's like, oh, what will I have to eat today? Because once you start getting to that point, especially when you're trying to lose weight or be on a diet, it's like, huh, what should I have? Well, it's not what should I have,
Right.
it's what would I like to
Hmm.
have. And then that's where it comes, well, what is what I would like to have healthy, and will it help me accomplish my goals? And usually the answer to that question is it's
Mm-mm.
not.
Mm-mm. Yeah. That's why, like, just in like a notebook or in a planner or just anything, it's setting those long-term goals is so it's so important because setting that long-term goal, you have to break it down into individual weekly goals or daily goals or even hourly goals if you're going for that. But it's yeah, it's like if you're going for a diet and you want to lose 40 pounds, it's okay, I really want to get fast food for dinner, but that's going to slow down my weight loss progress by so much, even if it's at first glance it's only this extra amount of calories and carbs and sugars and whatnot, but it's how your body reacts to that and how long it takes to reset to get into its actual good state of how your body actually wants to function. So you're losing
Well,
not only that, but just compounding.
and it's not only that, but it also is what it does to your mind.
Yeah.
Is whether you're trying to maybe give up smoking, give up alcohol, try to not eat. It's like, okay, I'm set, and I've told myself this is what Chad eats for dinner. This is what Chad eats for breakfast. This is who Chad is. This is what my diet is. It's like, okay, okay, this is what Chad does. And then it's like, oh, well, no, today Chad eats pizza
Mm-hmm.
and 3 Snickers. Well, wait, is that who Chad is? And then my mind starts wondering. It'd be like telling a kid, it's like, hey, like this is what's food, this is what's food, and it's like, oh, well, now this is what's food. It's like, oh, wow, okay. So I like this. This tastes way better. It's like,
Yeah.
and just doing that to our minds,
Mm-hmm.
I think really deprives what we can do in terms of accomplishing those goals because it confuses our minds. It's like you're not only you know creating a bad habit in terms of how that food affects you in the short time that you just ate it, but it also confuses your mind as to knowing what's acceptable and what's not acceptable for the future. And it helps you be able to lie to yourself in the future and be like, oh, well, last week I had Taco Bell or whatever, and,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't really that bad. So, and then what other areas of our life do we do that to
Mm-hmm.
where once we negotiate with ourselves once, then we do it again, and then we do it again, and then we do it again, and then you kind of get to a point where it's like,
It becomes habit.
well, not only it becomes habit, but it's like I don't want to do that goal anymore. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that just wasn't something I really wanted to do. It's
Mm.
like, yeah, I bet, yeah, no, it's not something you wanted to do
Yeah.
because you told yourself you couldn't do it, or you started giving yourself things that were counterproductive to accomplishing that goal.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of that. I guess
Yeah.
like this week, I didn't even realize we were talking about it. I think I started on like last Saturday or something, but we mentioned our topic from last week, but this week was the first week where I actually kind of wrote down like things to do during the week and just by the end of the week that I wanted to have them done. So I don't know, it's just interesting that we're talking about this now, I guess.
Yeah, and I think if we just take it back to the podcast, for example, right? So let's say, hey, let's do a podcast. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
So we say we're going to do a podcast. Okay.
Yeah.
So we want to do it once a week? Yeah. Okay. Let's do it once a week. Okay. Well, but it has to fit within our schedules, right?
Right.
And so each one of us had to sit there and we had to decide, okay, what days are possibilities of working? Because we knew if we just said, okay, we're going to do it once a week and we're going to do a podcast, that if that time wasn't created or that opportunity wasn't created, it was like, one, our mental state, we would hold off of thinking
Mm-hmm.
about what the topic was to be able to have decent content and then to be able to talk back and forth and have a good conversation. And two, it's like, oh well, tonight's not going to work. That I thought it was, but now it's not. And now it's where it's this date night or whatever you want to call it is
Mm.
set in stone. So every Friday at 7:30, and now on Tuesdays for the Bible study one, it's set in stone. So where that all of our other things that go on in our life are working
Yeah.
around that. And I think this is the one of the first times in my life where I've had that structure outside of a job, to where like my job, I know I have to be there at 9 and I'm working until 6. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and everything that you do in terms of goals has to be like that. It has to be like work. Like, you're not going to show up late to work, so don't show up late to your goals, and
Mm-hmm.
don't you know you got to make money. You don't want to get fired, and you're going to be there the whole time. And that's kind of what all these goals and holding yourselves accountable is all about, is that most of us will hold ourselves accountable when it comes to appeasing others, but we don't hold ourselves accountable when it comes to appeasing ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes that's because we just have less self-respect for ourselves based on not having the confidence, and I think just the true desire, like the true desire to be able to want to accomplish that goal, and not being able to realize how much, one, that pleasure will bring you from accomplishing that goal, or two, how much pain you will receive from not accomplishing that goal. And if you can't fathom either one of those two things, if you can't grasp it, it's really probably not a goal that is going to be able to be attainable, because you're not going to, one, have the dedication that you said, or two, be able to hold yourself accountable.
Yeah, I feel like when we do things for other people and we set like a schedule like that, it's it like so many ideas that I've had where I've just like been talking to friends, or it's like, do you wanna like start doing this or that, or and we never like set a date for it. We never set a time for it. It's like, oh yeah, that would be awesome. And then it just falls to the wayside, and then nobody talks about it. It doesn't get done. So then we just forget about it. And then a couple months later, it's like, oh, whatever happened about that? And it just never comes into fruition. But it's just you set a specific time where it's okay. It's like, do you want to do something on Friday night? Well, it's like, okay, well, what time? I'm busy during 7:30 to whatever. It's like you have to just give yourself the time of day, where if you don't do that, then you're just going to see yourself doing kind of whatever. Kind of like the diet. It's like if you don't have a specific diet and you don't know what you're going to eat, your mind's going to go, okay, well, what do I want to do? What do I want to eat? And it's just going to find something to fill that void. Sometimes it's going to be towards your goal, but most of the time it's probably just going to be something random that's not really going to benefit you in any way.
Right. And what you just explained right there was the difference between something that's an idea and something that is a plan.
Right.
So yeah, it sounds interesting for us to hang out. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, let's hang out sometime. And that's usually how far it goes.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is we come into the holiday season. If you think about Thanksgiving, right? Like, everybody has decided Thanksgiving is
Mm-hmm.
thanks it's the last Thursday in November. So everybody in their family, they know next year when Thanksgiving is going to be. They
Mm-hmm.
already know that they're going to be spending that time with their family. They've already blocked it off. Christmas is on the 25th of December. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that's really, really special about the holidays, is that it's that accountability where the US, us as individuals, we've all held each other accountable that this is the day, this is the set time for when family gets together and be is able to enjoy these times. And I think that's something that's special because we all agree on it, right? We all agree on
Yeah.
this one goal of being able to share this family time. And for us, we had expressed earlier in earlier episodes that our family all got virtual reality headsets. Now, before we went and got these, we sat and we talked and we said, okay, so we would all like to get virtual reality headsets. We all want to hang out more. So how do we accomplish this? It's like, okay, well, what day is going to work for you guys? Well, this day won't. And we found out that there was only one day that was going to work, and it was going to be on Sundays from usually 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock. That was the only time that was going to work for everybody. But we all had to agree, hey, this is the time we're going to do it? Yes. And once we were able to do that, then buying those virtual reality headsets wasn't just a waste, and that we've been able to stick to it and accomplish that goal,
Mm-hmm.
and have that enjoyable time every single time. But it has to do with that routine, and I think each one of us holding ourselves accountable to where we put more priority in that family time, to where, I don't know. Previously, like if I had something like that, it was just like, oh well, we don't have it planned or anything. So it's like, well, if
Mm.
something else comes up throughout the week, like I'm gonna do that because
Right.
I just don't want to be bored or anything like that. But right now, we've just all created that in our minds where this is when we do it. So everything else that could come up, it says, no, that's family time, that's VR time, that's podcast time. So I can set it up, but it has to be just at another time. And that's what's awesome. The more,
Mm.
I think, routine that you get, the more of these commitments that you have in life, not only, I don't know, it brings a lot of purpose. I don't know if you've
Mm.
noticed that or anything, but it brings more purpose to my life when I
Mm.
have things that are scheduled out and they're planned and they're there to do us. And it gives me something to look forward to too.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't think I've never really had that before.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it being at a specific time every single week and like the same time every week is very important because it's not, you don't have to text each other like, oh, hey, is this day at this time going to work this week? Because if you're just changing it every single week, then at the start of the week, you're going to be like, okay, well, is it on Friday this week or is it on Saturday this week? I don't really remember. And then people are going to end up canceling and it's just going to end up falling through some weeks just because it changes every week. But I think because you set it at a specific time every single week and you just, at, after the first couple weeks, it's like, okay, I remember that Sunday at this time isn't going to work for anything else because I'm dedicating my time to this. Or on Friday, I'm dedicating my time to this. So I'm going to block off all of the other plans to where I'm not going to allow myself to do something else. It's just getting into habit and doing things that you want to do, you set out to do, and just coming through on it. It's very important just to, yeah, but like you said, it's a sense of fulfillment. And like you said with the podcast, it's just we've done it every single week, and not missing a week is, it just shows the dedication and the level of, I don't know, just the wanting to be a part of it, I guess, and not just kind of putting it to the wayside and just coming through on what we said we were going to do and actually doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and to me, it's almost a thought of like it's unacceptable, or
Right.
it's not okay to do that. And as you talk and as I think about that, it's like we're in football season right now. So the NFL, and you see so many people, it's like, I can't do anything on Sunday because I got to watch
Hmm.
football. This is like, well,
Yeah.
it's not something I really want to do, but
Yeah.
I understand now. It's like those guys have that commitment in
Yeah.
whether it's spending time with friends or rooting on their team,
Huh.
or then, oh, I can't do anything on Saturdays because that's college football. So it's like, sorry, hun, like my
Yeah.
weekends are shot now. Like, forget
Yeah.
about me doing any chores or anything like that. We got
Yeah.
college and then NFL. And it's like, then I got to go to work. So it's like, what? I don't have any time.
Yeah.
But it's making some type of priority and whatever that is,
Hmm.
uh, to be able to enjoy it.
Yeah. It
So
just, no,
what's that?
you go ahead.
Yeah, and I guess for me, one of the big parts of accountability is if we can't hold ourselves accountable for the things that happen to us, our lives will always be dictated and determined by other people and what we allow to happen. And a lot of this comes from like maybe that victim mentality. So the coach the coach picks the team, my boss chooses who gets the raise, my family and friends choose my happiness. If that's always the mindset that we have, well, my boss, I don't know why my boss didn't give me a raise. He's making me work all these extra hours. Like, it's just ridiculous. Where it's like, well, what about your accountability level?
Hmm.
Have you held yourself accountable? Have you had self respect to say, hey, listen, I've worked the last 3 weeks on the weekend. Like, I understand that we're busy, but I also need to have time with my family. I can't work. Like, has that conversation came up? Have you held yourself accountable to the time that you have there with your family and being able to enjoy that? Or have you kind of just sunk down and like just continued on with it? And some of this has to do with setting up boundaries too.
Hmm. Yeah, that's like the saying is control, worry about the things in life that you can control, and don't try to control the things that you can't control. But I think a lot of the time it ends up being like you said, that victim mentality where, oh well, I can't control that, so I'm not gonna do anything about that. But it's like, okay, you can't directly control it, but can you indirectly control it by showing that you're putting in the work, you're putting in extra hours, you're coming in early, you're leaving late? Do you Are you showing the attributes of somebody who wants to get a raise, or are you just kind of going through the motions? And it's just like, are you trying to get better at yourself each and every day, or are you just kind of going through the motions? Because sure, you can blame it on, okay, well, I'm not the one that makes the decision, but to a certain extent you kind of are. You are in charge of your own life. Sure, you can't control if somebody cuts you off in traffic. You can't control if you get stopped at a red light. But there are things that you can control, like you can control it by leaving early. You're not going to get late even if you stop at every single red light. If you leave 15 minutes extra early, or you're not going to you you're going to set yourself up in the position where you have to get raised. You have to get a raise, or you have to be picked on the varsity team because it would be stupid to not pick you. You just have to set yourself up and go through the steps that is required to make yourself noticeable. Just be different from the rest of the crowd, which is so, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the time it's everybody kind of wants to be a little bit of the same, but the same is boring and the same is monotonous, and a lot of the times it's taking the easy way out rather than kind of toughening up and going through the things that are required to grow.
Yeah, I think most of us, if you asked us, what we want to do or anything like that, a lot of us would say that we wanted to be famous or to accomplish big things. But how many of us want to put in the hard work and the effort and give up a lot of the
Mm.
things, the times out, the drinking, the whatever it is with our friends, the partying, to be able to work on ourselves, to have that self confidence, to continue to work on that skill set, to be better, to be able to continue to accomplish that goal of being famous or whatever that might be.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Because,
like at the end of the day, you see all of these people in these higher positions than you, and a lot of the time it stems from envy, but it's like you aren't putting in the hours or the work or whatever is required to get to that level, but you want to be at that level, but you're not doing what is required to get to that level.
yeah, and that's something I'd heard at some of my previous jobs. Like, some of the people that would come in, they'd be wealthy individuals, and you'd see them, and they'd be like, "Yeah, oh yeah, he's like he got the money from his dad or whatever." It's like, okay, but then when you ask him, hey, like, we're gonna be trying to like do some new marketing over here. Like, you want to you have any? It's like, no, that's not my job. It's like, okay, like,
Yeah.
I know it's not your job. I get that. I know that.
Hmm.
But if you want to progress and you want to learn new opportunities, it's an opportunity for you to grow and to be able to have more ideas. But you don't want to take the time because whether it's the Instagram or whatever it is while you're at work, it's just like, what are you trying to do? And you had kind of already brought up, it's like the more that you learn, the better skill set that you have, the more valuable you are, one, to your team, two, to your family, three, to your job. Like, people who are super successful and valuable, it's not like they just get rid of them or they look over them, because they know that if someone is that valuable, that they're going to go somewhere else. And I think that's something that's really, really important, is that if you are applying yourself and you are doing all these things
Mm,
and you aren't getting that raise and you aren't getting picked for that team, then it's time to start looking elsewhere. It's
mm,
time to start being a good interviewer. It's time to start updating that resume, to looking at other schools to go play or whatever it might be, and then going and getting out of, like, I don't know how many
yeah.
times where you'll see people who were really, really good workers and they weren't getting the recognition that they deserve, and then they go somewhere else and it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like that, you can tell when a business loses someone, and how that affects them. Like, it's like, oh, this place is nowhere close to as good as it
Yeah.
used to be.
Yeah.
And I think, in, being down here in South Florida in the Marlins, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like, you guys are terrible. And
Mm-hmm.
like, it's like, then they have Yelich. I don't know if you remember
Mm-hmm.
Christian
Yeah.
Yelich.
Yeah.
Like, he used to play for the Marlins and he wasn't like super great or anything. And
Mm-hmm.
then he goes to like the Brewers and he's an all-star. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what the heck? Like,
Yeah.
uh, like, okay, come on, what's going on here?
Yeah. Or another scenario is like you see all these people that like they are deserving of a raise and they're not getting the raise, and then they're surrounded by a bunch of people who are doing just the normal, and they're doing pretty much the bare minimum. They're not trying to get raises. They're just going through their day. They're collecting their paycheck. They're going home. And then they see that and they're like, I'm doing way more than this guy, but he's getting the exact same hours. He's getting the same paycheck. It's like, why am I doing all this extra if I'm not getting a raise at the end of the day? And then they see themselves like stop doing all the extra stuff just because they think that it doesn't matter, or they don't see their value in the company and try to take it elsewhere. They kind of sink down to the standard, and it's yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's how cancer spreads.
Yeah.
If there's somebody inside of that, no matter how healthy of an individual it is, if you go into this group of just people that are just all cancerous and they're all negative,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be extremely difficult for you to be able to not become that
Mm.
while you're at work. And how you speak and how you talk. Oh my gosh, dude, I've been part of that so many times, and it's so hard. The only way I've been able to accomplish it is with the support group that I have, is after work, being able to connect with that friends, those family members, or, then on the weekend, whether it's a church or just people who are positive, being around them and surrounding yourself with those people.
Mm-hmm.
If you have to be in that negative spot to go to work or whatever it might be, whenever you're not working, you can't be around those people, and you can't be hanging out with those people outside of work
Mm-hmm.
or doing that, because it will just, it destroys you.
Mm-hmm. It'll consume your whole entire life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it grows into your mindset, and then you stop thinking about what you can do, what you will accomplish, or anything like that. And I think, this is one of the reasons we go back to having the routine and the schedule, is when I think about sports. That was one thing that was always great about sports. It was like, okay, we're in basketball season. All right, well, I'm just going to go play basketball. So the coaches and the organizations have already came up with all the games, so it's not
Mm-hmm.
like I have to go think, oh, let's see, tomorrow at 6 we're going to play this team, and then like, that's already been
Mm-hmm.
created. So all I have to do is just work on playing,
Mm-hmm.
and then I go to the games. I show up to the games. I show up to the games, and I show up to the games. And I think for me, even in adult life, like, people talk about having to schedule maybe events or go hanging out with friends and trying to go on vacation. It's just like, oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
it's just overwhelming to me. Where it's just like, if I think about, I just want to go watch my kids play sports, it's like, yeah, that's awesome. So it's like, okay, And I think that was what was really special to our dad. It
Mhm.
was like that's what gave him something to do. So it's like,
Mhm.
okay, Tuesday you're playing Brunson, Friday you're playing Coldwater, and I'm gonna be there. And
Mhm.
it's like, that was his sense of being around people, to be able to kind of be around other people, go out and about. And for me, that's one thing that sports was. It was that sense of, I guess, routine, of being able to have that opportunity to have fun, and being in that, like, I guess, not really a party scene, but I remember enjoying going to your games because I knew there would be other people there to talk to, and it's like that.
Mhm. Yeah, just even going to a sporting event from a spectator's point of view, it's you're not going out there playing, you're not practicing every day, but you still have that schedule. And like you said, it's just that routine is so huge in forming habits and continuing on habits. It's just the lack of routine. I don't know. For me, at least, it kills habits very fast. If there's no routine, then I notice myself stopping and not continuing, regardless of whether it was something that I really wanted to do or maybe not so much. But if I have a routine for something that maybe I wanted to do a little bit and then I grow it and I grow it and there's still that routine, I'll keep doing it. But whereas if it's something that I really wanted to do at one point, but I don't have a routine for it, it's pretty much just going to fall to the wayside. And I've noticed that with pretty much everything.
Yeah, it will stop dead in its tracks. it,
Mm-hmm.
it, it doesn't go any further.
Yeah.
And where I was going, with the accountability on the second aspect of it, is that when you have maybe relationship issues or problems at work, or friend issues, or whatever it might be, if there's something that happens, and it seems to have negative results, where maybe the friendship's over, or you're no longer working for the company, or you lose some money, that each one of those opportunities, if you take that to be able to sit back, reflect on that moment, and take accountability for what you did wrong in those situations, that's how you learn from your mistakes and be able to win in the future. And so, a lot of times, what we like to do and what feels good is to take that victim mentality and be like, I can't believe that happened to me. Like, how could something like that happen to me? Because, like, I don't do anything wrong, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like, Jake went and he did this, and it was like, it was all his fault. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's like, when I have that mindset, it stops right there. It was all Jake's fault. It's like, oh yeah, well, that's the answer. It was just all Jake's fault.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I dig deeper, it's like, well, I think maybe I said some things wrong, and maybe those impacted Jake in a negative way, and maybe our communication styles don't really get along all that well, and then that kind of created this uh, turmoil, or this argument over here, and then that created this, and I can sit and reflect. Then I can go back and look at maybe the things that I could have done better in that situation. So when a situation occurs like that in the future, whether it's with Jake or with my boss or whoever it is, then I can have more presence, or I can try to be present more in those moments. So, how I watch my words and my actions, and how I ask better questions, and how I communicate, so that something like that could have went into an argument, uh, I'm able to see and understand more, so that we can both see better and then work through that issue. And then in the future, we learn again, and we learn again, and we learn again. And I think that's the biggest thing for me in terms of accountability, is being able to sit and reflect on those types of situations, so that I can do better in the future. And from some, the sales process is so very much like that, is that you go, and I know, like, let's say you go and you knock your first door, right, and you've never knocked a door before.
Mm-hmm.
Now, first and foremost, I suggest that you go and you write down some type of script, and you practice that script back and forth with someone, so you can get comfortable about what you're going to say. But each time that you go knock that door, people are going to be react to a
Mm-hmm.
different
Yeah,
response. You're
yeah.
going to have all these different communication styles and this, and they're going to have a different reason for why they're not interested, or they're going to have different answers, and you may not know they're going to have different questions, and you may not know the answer to that. But then you take that time, you'd be like, okay, so they asked this question. Well, what's the answer to that question? Hmm, oh, okay. Well, here's the answer to that question. Okay, so I'm ready. I'm ready for that question again. Then the next door, it's like, damn, this question isn't anything like that question.
Mhm.
So it's like, okay, okay. Well, now I got two questions that I'm ready for. And then you go and you
Mhm.
do 100 of them, and none of them are the same. But then after that thousandth time, oh, well, this guy, somebody had already asked me this question, so I know the answer a little bit better now. I stumbled over it, and then
Mhm.
that's all it is. It's just mistake after mistake after mistake, practice, practice, practice. Uh, but be empathetic, and it can't just always be that the customer is always wrong. It's like, well, that guy was just an idiot, he didn't like what I was selling, or the it wouldn't have worked for him anyways. It's like,
Mhm.
no, if I can present this in the best way possible, and I can be empathetic, and I can be caring, and I can be loving, then I can learn. And it's not about so much as to winning, but um, we can have a better bond through the process.
Yeah. And I think with that whole example that you gave of like going door to door, and it's just like not only like learning all of the questions, but it's just learning how to be adaptable to different conversations because everybody's different in the way that they talk, in their understanding of the vocabulary, and maybe English is their second language, or it puts you through all of those situations and you get better at just communicating with people. You get more charismatic. And it's like, okay, if somebody just straight up tells you no, it's like, okay, well, I probably wouldn't have bought anything from myself either. I sounded like an idiot.
Right.
Or it's just, it's just going through that process and learning and just learning how to talk to people, learning how to get your point across in not as few words as possible, but get straight to the point. And if they ask questions, then answer questions and tell them a little bit more about yourself. And just I don't know, charismatic people are very, I don't know, being charismatic is something that's very important to people. They want to see the person behind the product that they're buying. I think that's a very big aspect of things.
I agree with you. It's important to be charismatic, but it's even more important to be empathetic.
Mm.
And so when you can be empathetic and you can ask the right questions as to why someone would want something. Like I've had tours, for example, where they go through the property and they're not really asking a lot of good questions. And then, we go down, and at the end of the tour, I'm just like, Jake, we went through the whole property, and this property just hasn't made your eyes light up like a lot of people it would do when they're ready to submit an application. And the amenities, when we went to the pool, you guys didn't really say much about that. It's like, it doesn't seem like you really have an interest in that property.
Mm.
And they'll be like, yeah, I just don't. And I'll have that to where I won't go, and then they'll leave and be like, oh, I wonder if they like the place or anything like that. I point
Mhm.
out I point out the things that I see. Like
Mhm.
if we're having a podcast conversation, and I notice that you're not really saying much or something like that, it's okay for me to point out. I was like, hey Jake, like, doesn't seem like you have much interest in the topic that we're talking about right
Mhm.
now. Just point it out.
Mhm.
Because when I point it out, I'm noticing and I'm recognizing what's going on. And you're either going to share that, or you're going to sit back and say, oh, wow, man, maybe, yeah, I guess I haven't been super in tune with this. And yeah, maybe I could pay attention a little bit more. But I'm going to get some type of clarity in that because I'm empathetic of being able to look at you more and trying to understand you and asking you more questions that I am trying to just spit out knowledge about whatever it is that I'm talking about, and trying to understand.
Yeah. Because a lot of the time it's people, I don't know. People are only so interested in all of the background information about whatever you're selling. It's just kind of how it applies to them and what it'll do for them rather than it's just like, I don't really care how other people use this or what other people think of this. It's how is this going to benefit me, you know?
Right. And how something is going to benefit them is different for absolutely
Mm-hmm.
everybody. So a few years back, I was an elite Yelper.
Hmm.
So that was somebody who would go and leave reviews about restaurants. And in so doing, I came across a lot of friends and family, and I would talk to them about what was important to the restaurant. And after I would leave a review, it'd be like, well, they thought this restaurant was good, or they thought this restaurant was terrible. It's like, why didn't I think that? It's like, oh, I know. It's because we all look at restaurants differently. And I
Hmm.
came up with a list of like 10 different things. One was the price, two was how much food you got. Three was the cleanliness of the restaurant. Four was like the customer service. Five was like the atmosphere. Six was like the quality of the food. And so each one of us determine how good a restaurant is based off of our thing, right? It's our thing. And so the when it comes to maybe having a relationship or communication or even selling something, it has to do with finding out what your thing is.
Hmm.
Like now that I'm in an apartment complex and selling this, some people really like to have a nice view. Some people really like to have a big apartment, or they like walk-in showers, or they like to be closer to the ground level, or they like the amenities are important to them. And it's all of those are fine, but I can't really help to show you what this property has to offer you until I know what it is you want, or that is going to bring you that happiness or that enjoyment
Hmm.
from whatever it is I'm selling.
Yeah. And that reminds me, it's like, so whenever we're working on like a new home or anything, it can get as custom or as basic as you want it to be. Like you can go super custom cabinets, or you can just go the standard. This is kind of what we do for most people if they don't really have any idea on what they want. Or like right now, we're doing a house where it's like, it's going for a rustic look, which it's okay. I like the idea of rustic look, but we were putting up some tongue and groove panels for like a ceiling yesterday, and it was like it looks like they're buying like pre-used stuff, like they're buying brand new products, but it's going through the factory to making it look like it's all beat up, and it makes no sense to me. Like they have
Like
these.
ripped jeans.
Yeah, yeah, but it's like your whole new house, and I don't get it. And there are these every single door in the house. It's like I like the look of like old oak wood doors, and I think they look super cool. But the one thing is they have super old they're brand new handles, but they're made to look like they're super old, like the doorknobs, and they squeak. It makes no sense to me why somebody would buy brand new doorknobs and they ask for them to squeak. Like what? It doesn't make any sense.
Dude, like the washer and dryer, you guys take those in and they give you a baseball bat and be like, hey Jake,
Yeah.
put a few dents in these.
Yeah. It's like
Give it a little rustic look.
it's like if that's what they want, then that's what we'll do, but yeah, just like you said, it's like what what is important to these people and what do they want? Because at the end of the day, that's the product that they'll get. It's just yeah, it just made no sense to me. I was in awe that that's something that people wanted from their doors.
And you know what's interesting to me is that everything that someone buys, there's a first time that they buy it or their
Mm,
first time that they experience it. And oftentimes, when they're going to make that first purchase, they don't, there's a good chance that they don't really know what they want. Now, there's people like me and you who I think are the owl who we would go and analyze things, and we're
mm.
always like I've watched 100 YouTube videos about what car I want, so I pretty
Right,
much
right.
know exactly what car I want. I'm
Yeah.
not going to go to the dealership and you're going to sell me a
Yeah.
Corvette when I know I want a 4-inch lifted Jeep with like the big old fog lights on the front.
Hmm.
I already know what I want. Like
Yeah.
it's just a matter of finding the one and the color and everything that I want. And
Yeah.
if you haven't, well, let's just work out the deal and the price. But when it comes to these first time purchases or these people who maybe don't have that mentality and they're just trying to figure out what it is they like. So I'll
Mm.
tour people who have gone like I'll be like, how many places you guys visited? They, oh, this is like 30. I'm like, oh, you've gone to
Yeah.
30 places and like how am I gonna win this? And it's like it's
Hmm.
not about winning, but you realize the questions that they ask, they don't have many questions. And so that's what I bring up. Like most
Yeah.
people think that square footage is important or this. What would you say is important to you? Oh, I don't know.
Hmm.
And oftentimes they don't know what they want until they've went somewhere and maybe
And they
lived for a
saw it.
year or
Yeah.
drove a car that has caused them issues and has gave them just absolute nightmares.
Yeah.
And then the next time they know what they want, they're like, well,
They know what they don't
how's the
want.
noise? Right, yeah, how's
Yeah.
the noise here? Like, what are the issues with that? Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you guys have issues with hot water? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like I'm
Yeah.
sure you're in an apartment complex now where you've moved there, and maybe there's things that you've experienced that you
Mm-hmm.
realize in the next place that you go, it's like, all right, we're gonna make sure that when we go tour this place, we ask these questions because I
Right.
don't want everyone to deal with this again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, just learning what you like is super important, but learning what you don't like is equally important because yeah, it's yeah. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, and that's my issue is that I sometimes I feel like I have a hard time making friends, but the reason I have such a hard time making friends is because I know what I don't like, and so I
Mm-hmm.
meet so many people who have those traits and these things that I don't really care for and I don't really like. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, yeah, I don't want that, so like,
Yeah.
or whatever. But one of the things when it comes to accountability in the sales process or presenting ourselves that I think is important. And oftentimes, when it comes to like the making friends or maybe even the dating scene or the sales scene, is that there's this mindset where you're trying to win people over. And in the sales approach, there was always this saying where you should be able to sell ice to Eskimos.
Mm-hmm.
And you should be able to make it look so good to them that they want it, to create that want. And I don't think that that's a very viable approach to be able to, one, building lasting relationships, or two, to be able to sell something and for that something to be valuable to the people. Because this is what happens is that during that process, if you're selling something and you have to be perfect, or you present yourself as being this perfect human being to your friends, or exactly what it is they want, whenever you're not that, then they think less of you because you presented yourself as you were. And each time you make those mistakes, it's like they're less and less and less. Whereas if you would just go there and you would be your true, authentic self, and they can accept you for who you are, that's going to prolong. And one of two things is going to happen is that you're going to see who their authentic self is, and you're going to decide that that's not something that you really mesh with, and maybe they'll say that too. Or they're going to be able to accept it for what it really is, and they're going to appreciate that you're able to show that you're not perfect, that you have flaws, and that those flaws are something that they can deal with.
Yeah. And I think your example of trying to sell ice to an Eskimo, for example, it's if I don't know, just being genuine. People, the idea of being genuine keeps getting brought up, but it's so true. It's like, does are you going to sell something to somebody who doesn't really need it, but you're just going to make it look so enticing that you're hyping up this product and you're going to make somebody buy something that they don't actually need? Whereas making a product for a target audience and going after that target audience who's in the market for buying that, and rather than making a product and just going out in such a general broad audience and selling it to people that don't need it, whereas somebody comes in and they're looking for something in specific and you say, well, this isn't going to do that, so I can't really help you. And it's just that little bit of respect. It's like, you're not going to try to sell me this even though I don't really need it. And it's like, well, no, I don't think you need it, so why would I try to sell you it? And it's just, at the end of the day, just being a freaking person, dude, and not trying to take advantage of people for maybe your salesmanship skills are so good that you can make people want to buy things that they don't need, but just having the ability to say, no, I'm not going to sell you this, or I'm not going to persuade you to buy this because you don't need it. And just, I don't know, just being a person, I guess.
So I would say that oftentimes you're not able to sell someone something that they don't need or they don't want. But what you're doing is you're changing their perspective of what something is to the point where they feel like it's going to be a benefit to them. And in the long run, it's actually not going to be a benefit to them. And it's going to add no
Mm,
value to what they currently have.
right.
To you may make the sale, but it's not going to change that. And you brought up a good example. That's exactly what I think is important in sales, is that I would much rather sell the product to 10 people that's going to change their lives than to 100 people that are just going to throw it out after
Mm-hmm.
a month. Now, obviously, if it's something like a car or a house, that really is terrible, because that's a huge burden that they have. But like, I'd go back to the VR headset. And so I think that it's something that's an amazing product that I think a lot of people would want. And so you can create that want and desire in them by going and allowing them to use it and put it on. But for me, it's about sharing that experience of how our family has been able to connect
Mm-hmm.
from living all over the, I guess, the country. I live in South Florida. Now you guys are somewhat in close proximity, but we can all be in the confines of our own home,
Mm-hmm.
not have to travel anywhere, and within 2 minutes turn on the headset and be playing mini golf together.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that's been very valuable now, to where other people, if maybe they don't have that experience of being able to connect with other people online, that they go and they try the mini golf and it's just like, okay, well, it's not important, and now I don't want to buy this. It hasn't impacted them that
Mm-hmm.
way. So there are things I think that you can sell that can create that impact that people may not be aware of. Whereas like 4 or 5 years ago with us for the headset, I don't know if it would have had that impact
Mm-hmm.
if we didn't realize what the capabilities with it were.
Right.
So you can sell, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think just the realization that we're kind of, I don't know, everybody's kind of grown up doing their own thing. We never really get together to talk or anything like that. So just like setting aside an hour, 2 hours a week and just kind of reconnecting, kind of like we used to when we all lived in the same houses. I don't know, there's so much value in family and siblings and everything. It's just being there, and you can, everybody's mannerisms, it's like you can tell like they're all the same. Like you miss a putt from a foot away, it's like, oh, you see their head go back and their hand go, and it's just, I don't know, it's just a good time. Or if you're just like putting your head on the ground right next to the hole and watching it go in, and it's just, I don't know, there's just something to it. But yeah, it's just coming to the realization that maybe we haven't been as close as we used to be, and what are possible ways to solve that. So that was one of the possibilities, and that's what we did. So
Yeah. And what's interesting to me is that I think we all have different love languages. And I think like I've said, that mine is, growing a little bit more towards like, I think words of affirmation, quality time, and physical touch is something that's
mm-hmm.
been more important to me, as I realized as a younger kid that I wasn't really given many hugs. And so when I was, I almost always had to ask for them. So it's felt very, uh, unnatural to have to always ask. Where if I have somebody come up behind me and give me those things, it
Mm-hmm.
feels like a sense of wanting.
Mm-hmm.
But the VR process of being close and almost like that connectedness has really brought me a lot of things that have been meaningful. And like for me, the quality time, the philosophical conversations are something I really enjoy. But it's amazing for us that we don't spend a lot of time having deep conversations. Most of the time it's trying to win or whatever,
Yeah.
that just bring that closeness. It's not about really talking about or anything. It's just spending quality time together, which is amazing. Like it's like, well, I can do this on my own,
mm-hmm.
and we're not here. But when it's with people that I care about, it's so much better.
Yeah.
And another thing I noticed is when we're doing the escape room, is I really enjoy that because we're working together as a team, and then we accomplish something and we actually like win and we figure out and we solve problems. And I've seen you guys, um, just to be able to like see how well, I wouldn't say how well, but how differently our
Mm-hmm.
minds work and
Yeah,
how
yeah.
we try to accomplish tasks or solve puzzles and stuff like that. It's just been amazing to be able to see that come from other people, and how together our skill sets can accomplish things very quickly.
Mm-hmm. And just being able to, because like you can't show somebody what you're seeing, so you kind of have to, especially if you're in like a different room or something, you have to do your best to describe it, and you have to think, how would this person understand me describing it? Because I can say a bunch of whole lot of mathematical terms and shapes and whatnot, and you're like, what the hell does a rhombus look like? And it's like, how would this person know what I'm seeing based off of my description? And you just have to, who am I talking to? How would they think it looks? So just, I don't know, just kind of being that chameleon like you were talking about. Just
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that, coming back to the accountability of this episode, is that escape rooms do a really good job of holding people. You have to hold yourself accountable, because when you go into a real escape room, each individual person is on their own, and we're trying to accomplish a task as a team. But someone who's a narcissist or arrogant can go in there and they can start looking under stuff and just putting it all over the place, and then just be like, oh, well, I didn't realize that how all these things were set up is really important, and how
mm-hmm,
we solve the problem like 4 or 5 times. It's like, well, where did you get that? It's like, oh, I don't remember. So that's like,
mm-hmm,
when you're going in that communication, you have to say, oh, this, okay, I see this over here, guys, and it shows this. This is up there. That's why I'm always trying to explain what I'm seeing and stuff,
mm-hmm,
because no matter if you guys are over there, I'm hoping you'll hear it,
mm,
just because you guys may be seeing something else. And if I can hear what you guys are saying, then we can communicate properly.
mm-hmm,
And you really have to hold yourself accountable to a standard. It's like, okay, if I was over there, I would like to hear what these guys are sharing and what they're talking about, so that I could try to figure this out as well. So how do we help each other do that?
mm-hmm. It's either that or complete and utter chaos. And it's just everybody talking over each other, everybody doing their own thing, nobody's getting
Right.
anywhere, making progress. Yeah.
Which there seems to be one person in our group who always likes to do
Yeah.
that. I wonder
Yeah.
who that
I
is.
don't know.
You don't name any names.
Nope. Hmm.
You idiots. No, yeah, okay, well, you guys just do it. Just go ahead and do it. Just go ahead and do it. I'll go over there and do
Yep.
something else.
Yep.
But going back to accountability and kind of, I guess, following up on that, when it comes to competition and it comes to accomplishing our goals, or trying to be the best that you can be in the gym, I think an important saying is that I don't compete against anyone else, I compete against myself.
Hmm.
And whether it's at the gym, or whether it's with my diet, or whether it's at work, is that I compete against how I was yesterday and how I answer the phone today, the attitude that I have, the things that I try to learn today, and the things that I set up to try to learn next week. I'm only competing with myself. Is that, yeah, there may be a lot of other people inside this company competing for that one position or that one spot on the team per se. And so, yeah, we are kind of competing, but I'm not going to get that position unless I change who I am today, tomorrow, next week, and I create all of these goals so that I can better myself to be better than I currently am. Because in order to reach that level, I have to be better than where I'm currently at. So I only compete with myself. If I don't put myself out there and I don't try to learn these things, I'm not going to progress.
Yeah. And if you're not progressing, then you're not reaching towards any of your goals. If you're not going towards any of your goals, then kind of like, what's the point? You have a job, obviously, and sometimes as working for yourself, sometimes as working for somebody else. But at the end of the day, if you don't like what you're doing, what are you doing to work towards starting to do what you do every day? And if that's not the case right now, what are you doing like that you actually do prefer to do rather than I'm spiraling a little bit. Well, what you don't like your current job. What are you doing outside of work that gives you fulfillment? You can't just live a life where you work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep. I feel like that's just a terrible existence to live in. And if you're doing that every single day for the foreseeable future, it gets to a point where it's kind of like, okay, well, what's really the point? Because if I'm just working and sleeping, there's no payoff, there's no time off to appreciate all the work that I'm putting in, then what's the point? And then it just kind of spirals from there, I guess.
Yeah, unless you absolutely love what you do and you feel like you're having an impact and
Mm-hmm.
you find value in it, I can, I think that's awesome to be able to have something like that. I'd say an example for me for competing with others would maybe at the gym, right? So sometimes I'll go into the gym and you'll see maybe younger kids, or there's the meatheads who are just there going pounding the weight. And sometimes I just have to stay so focused and put these blinders on myself. It's like, hey, Chad, you're just trying to stay toned. You're just trying to contract the muscle the best that you know how. I'm not 6'5", so I'm not going to have a huge, great, wide physique. I'm
Mm-hmm.
5'9". So what I can do is look the best at 5'9" that I could possibly look. Maybe in the winter, it's about putting on a little bit of bulking up a little bit, putting on a little bit of weight. So next year I can have a little bit more muscle, but I'm 40 years old. So it's about contracting the muscle versus putting up weight. I'm just trying to look good, be flexible, be healthy. And that's all I'm doing. And with the podcast, it's like, well, like Joe Rogan is like the best podcast ever, and I'm never going to be like him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, like, well, with that attitude, no, you're not. But it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so last week we tried. Well, last week you had Millie on, and
Yeah,
that
yeah.
seemed like that was a funny episode.
Yeah.
So you tried something funny, and then I think we're learning how to ask better questions. We're learning about trying to maybe have more guests on. We're learning how to articulate our questions a little bit better. We're learning how to possibly put in intro music. But we talk a lot and discuss a lot how our podcast can be better and
Mm.
what value can we bring to the listener. Because I think there's two things that we want to do. Is one, I would like to be able to impact people's lives and be able to help people. Two, I would also like to bring value to people. And so sometimes if I go and I look at the views and I don't really see like there's 4 or 5 views, it's like, well, um, not really doing either one of those. So it's like, well, this is a wash. And it's like, oh, maybe it's about marketing yourself a little bit better and putting yourself out there and meeting other people so that you can have conversations where you're learning things and still being able to communicate back and forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, if, like you said, Joe Rogan, and you look, it's like we were talking about earlier. It's like you look at the position that he's at right now, but it's like if you go back to when he first started, it's like his very first podcasts, they were not very good. Like, sure, he had people listening, but that's because he already had a name out there. He was on Fear Factor. He was narrating or the commentating for the UFC, but it's just like you can see how he progressively gets better and better because he does it every however so often he does. He innovates. He does things differently. He has fun with it. He really at the end of the day, he just likes to do what he likes to do and people like watching what people like to do. Like he was saying like he doesn't have an interest in building furniture or anything like that. But he'll watch like a 20-minute video of somebody like hand custom making a brand new couch or something just because you can tell the person has passion in that, and they
Yeah.
just watching people do what they love to do is, I don't know, people like stuff like that.
No, yeah, it's very admirable to be able to do that. And that's why for me, it's like, okay, yeah, I can come up with new ideas in the podcast. But one thing that I can always do is be able to connect with people. So the past few months, one thing that I've really been trying to do is offer people a smile, to be able to smile, to be able to say hi. I watched something today and it's like this idea of going up and saying, oh, how are you doing? It's like, how many people do you say how you're doing to,
Mm,
and it's not be like, how
yeah.
many people actually say, man, I had a rough day? It's like, oh, good, how are you? And Chris Voss, the guy that never wrote Never Split the Difference, that negotiation book I was telling you about, he was saying it's much more advantageous that when you see something from somebody, he's like, man, seems like you're having a rough day.
Mm,
or man, seems like you're really happy today.
Yeah.
Making those types of statements instead of just the nonchalant, how you doing? Hey, how are you? Like it's just like we were so accustomed to those questions, and for people to actually not care, but just to show a greeting or whatever it might be, to where you can really connect with people. And for us being a podcast, like the more people we can connect with, and the more people that want to connect with us on social media or whatever it is, the more people that we have the chance of their eyeballs coming to this podcast and being able to impact them, or being able to share with other people, or sharing laughter or whatever that might be, the more opportunities there are. Or maybe it's on us being guests on other people's podcast, or who knows, like public speaking is a huge deal. So
Mm-hmm.
like maybe it's a speaking engagement, maybe it's an opportunity to work with a brand. Like, dude, there are so many possibilities when you sit and think about whether it's a podcast, whether you're a student, maybe you're a teacher for little kids, and all the
Mm-hmm.
different opportunities. For me, this holiday season, and this in general, I've realized how much happiness, like just getting costumes and like being these personalities that I've created out in my head, how much happiness and joy that brings me,
Hmm.
dude.
Yeah.
Like when we were in Disney, Emily, the last night there, I'd always like create a lot of these characters, and one was this Italian guy. And he would be like, spicy meatball, Emily,
Mm-hmm.
you're so spicy, you're so
Mm-hmm.
spicy, and it just got her, laughing back and
Mm-hmm.
forth, and I would just go on and on about, speaking in that
Yeah.
language.
Yeah.
But it's amazing to see the joy when you create something like that, and how it impacts people. And it's I don't know, I love seeing people laugh and smile.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know, just having an effect on people's day. And yeah, like we were talking about before, it's just the little things can change somebody's whole perspective on the entire day or their entire week or whatever. It's just the human connection, I guess.
Yeah, and the accountability goes back to one thing, and that we're responsible and we are accountable for our lives and the happiness and the enjoyment and the joy that comes from that. So choose to be you, choose to do the things that make you unique, that bring you happiness, and hold yourself accountable for those things and whatever it is, to be able to set your life up so that those things seem to flow more freely inside of you, and that those opportunities seem to come, or you're just creating those opportunities to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Exactly. Did
Exactly.
Did you have anything more on the whole accountability front?
No, that
No
was it.
other side notes. Anything?
Yeah,
Is it your week or my week to share a story about dad?
we'll go with your week.
Are you sure it's not your week?
It might be my week, but I didn't think of anything. So if you have
I
something,
I also didn't think of anything for this week. Mm. Do you have something that you learned this week that you would like to share?
do you have something? Share something you learned.
um, hmm, I can't. I didn't think of that either. We haven't been doing that one in the past couple weeks, so I didn't really think about it. But
Okay, so I'll share a story, and that is kind of goes back to baseball. And so, um, my dad, back when I was an early teenager, he would smoke a lot, and so he used to be like a coach, and then like he got to where he couldn't really walk or anything, so he would always stay out like in the outfield fence, and that's where he would essentially light him up. But he used to tell me that he would smoke more when I was pitching because he would get so stressed when I was pitching. But one of the nice things also about him being all the way out in the outfield is that he was usually giving the umpires a hard time or
yeah,
yelling and complaining with our grandpa, who was also, oh,
yeah,
what are
yeah,
you what are you doing? Is like he was pretty much a coach too. So
yeah,
it's one of those parents where it's just like, please, just can you just like stop, like be
yeah,
quiet. But yeah,
yeah.
every game he had his lawn chair. He would take it out, walk out to the outfield, and he wouldn't usually just sit there and watch and
Mhm.
not say a word.
Mhm.
So you could always count on hearing your dad at the baseball game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, for me, it was never really out in the outfield. It was always right behind home plate. So, yeah. Well, I guess in little league and travel ball and stuff, it was in the outfield. But then it slowly, gradually got closer and closer to the dugout, closer and closer to right behind home plate, so everybody could hear everything that he was saying. So,
And that was because he started having, I think, a wheelchair where people would
yeah,
wheel him
yeah,
up
yeah,
there, so he would be close to them.
yeah. Yeah, he would just walk
Like,
the wheelchair back up, and then he would just sit right down, right behind home plate, and that's where he would
because
sit.
in Little League and Sandy Koufax, the fields were much farther away. That
Hmm.
as you got older with high school and stuff, it was easier to walk actually,
Yeah,
like be behind home plate than it was to get to the outfield. So,
yeah.
all right, well, enjoyed doing this episode. I think accountability is a really important aspects of people's lives, and
Hmm.
especially holding ourselves accountable. We didn't even get into the aspect of holding other people accountable, so
Yeah.
hopefully do that another time.
Alrighty, sounds good.
All right, guys, thanks for joining.
Yep. See you later, everybody.